The Lunar games are some of the most legendary JRPGs of all time. They're both classic adventure stories responsible for a lot of the most common tropes in the genre. The original Lunar is responsible for getting me back into JRPGs after having not played them for years, so it holds a very special place in my heart. However, both games have been stranded on the original PlayStation for decades, and now they've both been beautifully remastered into one collection. That said, this remastered package is a bit of a letdown that left me wanting much more.
I should have known I'd find you here.
Where else would I be?
By today's standards of storytelling, the Lunar games might seem a little trite, but keep in mind, these were originally released in the early 90s. These were the games that created a lot of the most common tropes still found in JRPGs today, but that doesn't make them any less enjoyable. And don't worry, I'll be keeping this review spoiler-free for those that are coming into these games for the first time. In Lunar Silver Star's story, it follows the adventures of Alex. He longs to become a great hero like his idol, Dragon Master Dyne. He and his friends travel across the world to fulfill his quest of becoming the next Dragon Master. In Lunar 2 Eternal Blue, it follows Hero. He has a passion for archaeology. His adventure has him aiding a mysterious woman claiming to be from a faraway star on a mission to stop the impending destruction of an evil force named Zophar. Both games are very lighthearted and lean towards being more silly than serious. They have a heartwarming innocence about them that I find incredibly charming. If you enjoy classic JRPGs with a great sense of adventure, then you are absolutely going to fall in love with these games. The characters are the glue that holds these games together and are what I believe have allowed the Lunar series to remain in the hearts and minds of players for so long. They're all so incredibly charming. Whether it's Ramus's unwavering desire to become rich, Luna's sweet demeanor, or Ronfahr wanting to atone for the failures of his past, there's certainly more than a few characters you'll find yourself growing fond of. However, one area of the stories I found myself disappointed with in these remasters was the voice acting. The actual performances of the new cast were all great, but there's just not very much of it. I guess I was expecting the entirety of both games to have voice acting, in the same way the recent Suikoden HD collection included full voice acting. I personally feel like voice acting breathes life into video game stories and allows the player to connect with the characters in ways text simply can't. It's not the end of the world, but I just wish Gung Ho did more.
Lady Luck be kind.
Both games play like very classic JRPGs for better or worse. You'll go to a town, get a bit of story, go through a dungeon, fight in turn-based combat, more story, go to the next town via a world map, rinse and repeat for about 30 to 40 hours. Now to be clear, I love this formula. I have zero issues with it. Nothing's better than a classic JRPG in my mind. In fact, the Lunar games actually have a few things in them that make them more tolerable than most retro JRPGs. For one, you can see the enemies as you're exploring areas so you can avoid them if you want. There's no random encounters here. But you really shouldn't skip any enemies, which is something I'll touch on in a minute. There's also statues of Althena in every town that you can usually use for free that refill your HP and MP instead of having to stay at an inn. Most characters also have special attacks that can hit more than one enemy, making fights a lot easier as the games go on and you recruit more party members. That said, even with the sped up combat added in this remastered collection, they can both be brutally difficult in the opening hours until you get a full party. In Lunar 2, I found myself dying to a random enemy group 10 minutes into the game. Until you have more party members, it's very easy to get overwhelmed and die if you're not careful. You also definitely need to grind, otherwise you're going to get overpowered even if you do have more party members. Again, in Lunar 2, after I just recruited Ronfahr, I found myself going to this desert area, fighting a single group of enemies, almost dying, going back to town to heal for free, and then repeating this process until I leveled up enough times. This was an incredibly tedious process and made the game incredibly unfun. Thank God for the speed up combat edition they added in this remaster, or else I don't know if I could have bared through it. Thankfully, this gets alleviated the more the games go on and the more you fill out your party. Instead of enemies ganging up on one character, their attacks are now spread out to a full party, and no one character can really get beat up that badly. Not to mention, you have more characters to do damage, so you can defeat the enemies a lot faster. This collection doesn't have an autosave feature, but you can save anywhere at any time, and I highly recommend saving often and having multiple saves so you don't get stuck anywhere or lose hours of progress. While not said explicitly, every character basically has a role in combat, whether that be to simply do damage, heal the party, cast spells, or do something in between. As each character levels up, eventually they get new spells that can be added to their repertoire that give them more options in combat. For example, Hero in Lunar 2 starts out with a simple boomerang attack, attack, but eventually he can learn a wind spell called Squall that can hit multiple enemies at once. Something to keep in mind is your distance in combat. Certain abilities can only be used if you're within a certain distance of enemies. Melee attacks, for example, might not be able to hit enemies all the way on the other side of the battlefield unless you're close enough, which can take you a few turns to get to. So there is some light strategy in combat. You don't always use your most basic attacks to just smash your way through combat. That said, you can set your characters to auto attack and they try their best to do the most logical moves as possible. You can tweak their AI in the menu if you want. Outside of combat and some light exploration, there really isn't much more to the gameplay. This is a very classic JRPG, so be prepared for a lot of combat.
What a strange world I've come to. Its beauty is unsurpassed, and yet it remains filled with such mystery and emotion.
Visually, the game holds up fairly well. Gung Ho did a nice job bringing the visuals of these PlayStation classics up to modern standards. They both run in full HD, 60 frames per second, and for the first time in widescreen. At first, I didn't think they really did much to adjust the visuals, but the collection does allow you to play with the classic visuals, so when comparing the two, it's obvious a lot of work was done. Something to keep in mind is you can't toggle the visuals at will. They're basically separate games within the menu, so you have to pick which ones you want at the beginning. This is an unfortunate decision and speaks to this remastered collection on a whole. Outside of the visual upgrades and allowing you to speed up the combat, there's really not much else to this remastered collection. After having recently played the Suikoden HD collection, I was thoroughly impressed. They added so much to those games that they border on remakes, including new backgrounds, new character portraits, fully voiced story, and much more. The Lunar Remastered Collection in comparison feels pretty bare bones. The menus definitely look and feel dated, and it would have been nice for Gung Ho to overhaul them. The same could have been said for the dialogue boxes. While I appreciate the classic nature of them, creating something new and giving players the option to choose would have been nice. I do want to give special mention to the music. The soundtracks of both games are incredible. They're so fun, upbeat, and give this great feeling of being on an adventure. These are games you definitely want to turn the sound up for. For most players, simply having these games available in one package on modern platforms will be enough. If that's all you're wanting, then this package will be perfect for you. But for me, I was hoping for more. Konami, for better or worse, has now raised the bar in my mind for retro remasters, and the Lunar Remastered Collection simply doesn't live up to that standard. The Lunar games are nostalgic gems, and it's wonderful to have them in one collection on modern platforms. At times, they don't always hold up super well, especially early on, and the collection on a whole doesn't have as many bells and whistles as you might expect. However, if you've never played these games before or are looking to take a stroll down memory lane, the Lunar games are absolute must-plays. Now, if you're in the mood for more retro goodness, like say the GBA era Fire Emblem games, then check out this review for Dark Deity 2. It's an incredible strategy RPG you don't want to miss.